Greetings, my beloved Black people. Welcome back to the plight and struggle of Black people in America. As usual, we have a very, very special guest. And this brother has a story that, wow, it really impacts so many things, so many people. I'm sure his life, those that love him, it impacts me. Just the thought of, seeing the times that our people go through things so unnecessarily, that is so unfortunate, it's so unfair, so unusual, it's so many things that are aimed at our people. We're just going to tell it like it is, nothing but the truth. But without further delay, I'm going to bring this guest, special brother, let him introduce himself, tell his story, and hey, we're going to go from there. Hey, brother, how you feeling?
I'm good. How you doing, Lorenzo?
I'm good, my man. It's good to see you again.
Yes, sir. Good to see you as well. Good to see you as well. Thank you for this platform opportunity to sit down and talk in the virtual world and share the story and share the journey. Yes, sir. Yes,
it's
sir.
Amazing, I think, because I'm not really savvy at this.
Right,
but the technology, well, it's so amazing to me.
Right. I think the beautiful thing about technology and entrepreneurship is when it comes together, you can get the right message out there if the right person is behind the scenes. And so I commend you, on doing what you do. A lot of times we think we need skill. We think we need, the collegiate degrees, in which it's good. It's good. It's an incentive. But if you don't have heart,
oh yeah, you got to care about something.
You got to care about something. That's gonna show the sustainability of what you do. And so I commend you, Lorenzo, and what you're doing, and that you keep pushing on, and giving people this platform and this opportunity.
Thank you again, brother. I appreciate that. Absolutely, I do.
Yes, sir. But man, you told me to introduce myself, so I'm gonna stick in line. I'm gonna stick in line with that, But so my name is Richard Miles, and I am the founder, director, and CEO of Miles of Freedom. I've been in this particular position for the past 11 years now.
That's great.
Yeah, our mission at Miles of Freedom is to provide holistic services for individuals, families, and communities impacted by incarceration. We believe that working in the space of reentry does not only include assisting the person that was directly incarcerated, but how can we provide services to the family in which that person would potentially be returning home to? How can we create resources in the community where 9 times out of 10 that person will return to? And so that's kind of like the modus operandus, the MO of Miles of Freedom. Our focus is reentry, holistic service.
Right. That's a great thing.
Yeah, and I also tilt my hat once again to you, because a couple of years ago I hadn't heard of you or your organization. And a lot of times the first time you hear of somebody is when they have their hand out.
Right.
But the first time I heard of you were giving out, and you came and you guys made a donation to Miles of Freedom. And so we appreciate that as an organization, that support, so I appreciate that. And it was very impactful. So thank you.
You're very welcome. And just for a moment to mention how that even came to be.
Yeah.
Because just by coincidence, my very last episode was the brother that was president of our organization at the time. And what happened was you spoke at their church. Our president and vice president at the time went to the same church. And he was so touched and impacted by your story.
Yeah.
He contacted me, which I'm secretary, and we had another treasurer, but we're both, involved with that part of it.
Yeah.
We came and brought the check together, me and Henry Moss, at your headquarters, right? At Martin Luther King Center in sunny South Dallas.
Yeah.
That's when I first met you.
Right.
because our president was so touched by your story, as I say, and he said we have to give him something. And that's
Yeah.
what we do when we can. That's what we do.
Hey man, that's what
Yeah.
you call a spontaneous seed. So,
Absolutely.
you
But
know,
you touch hearts is what you did. You touched those
yes, sir.
hearts.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you know,
Yeah.
I think that's why, I believe that's why I went through what I went through. Most people say that when you go through a negative thing, people always say, "Well, God sent me through it." I say that God covered me through it. God did
Mm.
not allow me. Uh, you know, He didn't foreordain me to be wrongfully incarcerated. That's the backdrop of my story. You know
Yeah,
that.
but you said God covered you through it. My mind automatically went to something of atrocities, potentially at least, and dangers and things like that.
Mhm.
How long did you actually do in prison?
Yeah, so the background of my story is out there. It's a lot. People can Google, Richard Miles and read a lot of the background. But I
Mm-hmm.
spent a total of 15 years
Mm,
in prison. I got locked up when I was 19
mm,
for a murder and attempted murder that I had no knowledge of. I was literally walking home. My friend had just dropped me off. His girlfriend stayed right around the corner. And so they arrested me at the age of 19, right after my birthday. Uh, and I would not walk out of prison until I was 34 years old.
mm.
So
Wow.
that full time, those formative years
Mm,
um, were basically um, born within the prison system, and I say God covered me through that because people often ask, how did you make it through? How did you make it through? And there's a scripture that says that the peace that surpasses all understanding. And there's peace in being innocent, right? If you
mm.
know if you haven't done anything wrong, it doesn't matter what all you go through. If you maintain your innocence, it's a peace within that.
That's
It doesn't mean that you're not going to feel the pressure, but it won't break you.
this is the thing that hits me.
Yeah.
I mean, even as a person that will be guilty and have to go to prison, in our case, a lot of times longer than everyone else. And I would suspect, even though a person is guilty, there's still a feeling of torment to some
Mhm.
degree. But
Mhm.
then you take it to a fellow, a brother, a black man that's innocent.
Mhm.
That's got to be extreme torment to me.
Mhm. Mhm.
Wow. So for me, it would be a mindset of how do I maintain my sanity? That would be
Right.
a issue for me, being innocent for sure. Being guilty, that's an issue for some people too, but then you brought it on yourself when you're guilty.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
being innocent, that I would have mental issues myself personally. It would be a job for me to maintain that sanity.
And I think in that note, we have to understand that we can only do what we can do. So if I relied on Richard maintaining his mental facilities
I
and
hear I
faculties,
hear you on that.
you dig?
I do, I do,
Richard
I
would have
do.
went cuckoo.
Yeah, you gotta find that rock.
You got to find that covering, and that covering is exterior of you.
It sure is. I can imagine. You're right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
And so I think that um, the every brother that you find, Dallas has about 60, it's probably about 63, 64 people that's been wrongfully incarcerated. A lot of them haven't been fully exonerated,
Mm-hmm.
but they've been wrongfully incarcerated and released. Some are pending exonerations. But everybody that you'll meet, you'll find an overwhelming sense of peace
Mm-hmm.
that's exuding out here because that's what covered them in there. And so we walk in which we are covered in.
That's interesting. I feel you too.
You know,
Yeah,
but it
yeah.
took time because
Right. Because you got to
you
go through other emotions, anger, hurt,
man,
confusion, so many things I can just
you
imagine. And you
get to that
experienced
point.
it.
You
Yeah, I
know,
feel you. Yeah.
you go back to my jury trial. So, uh, I had a 7-day jury trial. I was 19, 20 years old. Got locked up in 94. So I ended up staying in the county jail 17 months.
Mm.
And so the case that they had against me, what, as I said earlier, was murder and attempted murder.
Excuse me a
One,
second. Were you
yes.
denied bail or you couldn't make the
Oh, I
bail?
couldn't make my bail was $350,000.
Okay, so y'all
Yeah.
didn't have that kind of money.
Yeah, now I grew up in Oak Cliff.
Right,
I
right,
went to
right. What
uh,
part of Oak Cliff you grew up in?
right off of Mentor, Frio and Mentor, South Oak Cliff, right down the street from the VA hospital.
Okay, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what's up.
yeah.
Near
So
Slot?
now, I went to Skyline and Kimball. So I
Okay.
went to Lisbon Elementary right there on Lancaster.
Mm-hmm.
And then, for high school, for middle school, it was either back then it was Zoom Walk and it was Harry
Yeah,
Stone. I think it was Harry Stone that was right behind it. So my
yeah.
mom then found Longfellow Academy, which was a great school. So I went to Longfellow and eventually went to Skyline High School.
Okay.
So that was kind of like my upbringing. I have two younger brothers, one older sister. My dad is a disabled veteran. My
Okay.
mom was a school teacher
Oh
at
yeah.
Head Start. She worked at Head Start right there off of Sunnyvale,
Okay.
right
Yeah,
behind the Wells Fargo now.
you got some Dallas, Texas roots going on.
Oh yeah, I'm born and raised.
Yeah,
Everything about me is Dallas
I
except for
know
the
that's right.
Spurs. I don't wear
Except for the Spurs. You don't like the Spurs.
I don't I don't wear Spur boots.
Oh, you talking about, yeah. Do you wear cowboy boots? Because I've been here 42 years to be 43, except I never had cowboy boots.
I got one pair of boots, and I wouldn't refer to them as cowboy boots. They like some little ostrich skin boots, but
Okay.
uh,
Because
that's
I've
good.
heard people say if you ever wear cowboy boots, you always want them. But it's
Yeah,
just not my style. But the only way I would get something have to be a gift.
yeah. And then you might end up wearing them.
Yeah,
But
and I heard they feel good. I heard.
yeah, but so is the culture of Dallas, Texas. That people grow up and pursue different things and different
Oh
life
yeah.
and all of that. And so for me, you know, uh, coming out of high school, I was working at McDonald's, and I eventually moved from home. And this is when I got caught up in this wrongful conviction.
You had moved for home when you got in trouble. You didn't live at home at that time.
Yeah, I had moved. I had
Okay.
graduated. I was
Okay.
working at McDonald's on Ledbetter back then. It
Okay.
was a manager that worked there, and my idea was to move in with him. And I was going to go to TSTC in Waco because I
Okay.
took up plastics engineering at Skyline High School.
Right.
And I really liked plastics engineering, and TSTI or TSTC in Waco was this plastics engineering school. So I
Okay.
had went there when I was a senior, when I was a junior in high school, took this entrance exam. And so that's kind of like what my focus
And
was.
you passed that entrance exam.
Yeah, I was,
Okay.
man, I was in
Good.
the class for like 3 years. So
Okay.
I was really 2 years, excuse me, but I really loved it. And so that was my focus of leaving home. I didn't have
Right.
any
Right.
motive of getting caught up in anything. I grew up in the church. My dad, he passed 6 months before I got out, but he was a
Mm-hmm.
bishop. And so when I went to prison, my dad was a elder or a minister in the church.
Okay.
And so my spiritual upbringing was very, very structured and disciplined. I'll
Mm.
say that. We didn't have a choice to go to church. We
I
just
hear
knew
you.
what it was. Sunday, Monday,
It's
Wednesdays.
gonna happen.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen like a clockwork.
Oh yeah.
There wasn't no conversation about church. And so that's how I grew up, which was very
Wow.
important
Oh yeah.
when I went through what I went through, when we
Mm-hmm.
was talking about being covered
And maintaining that sanity.
and maintaining that sanity, right? And
That's
so
a task sometimes.
it's a task. So going
Mm-hmm.
through jury trial, they're talking about the case, and it was, a snapshot. It was 10 witnesses. 9 of them said I didn't do the shooting.
Mm.
One person said I did. It was a gunshot residue test that produced findings of gunshot residue in the palm of my right hand, but negative anywhere else. that later turned out to be false. Um, there was no gun found. Fingerprints was there. There was what
When you
wasn't
say
found.
that turned out false, was it a misjudgment or was it a purpose false? On
Um,
purpose?
Fast forward when the Innocence Organization took my case, so we didn't have the money to provide a expert witness to refute or challenge the prosecutor's introduction of this gunshot residue test,
Okay.
right? And so when this was introduced, my lawyer didn't have anybody to refute it. Fast forward when the Innocence Organization picked up my case, they hired a gunshot residue test analyst who tested the same test because it was still in my files.
Right.
And there was no gunshot residue. It wasn't.
So
And
it was
so
lied about is what it
she
looks like.
lied. And so they took this report back to the lady that testified in my trial.
Okay.
And she signed an affidavit in 2010 stating that if given an opportunity, she would not testify in the same manner as she did in 1994 because my hands were not dirty for gunshot residue tests. Right. You know, everything really pointed at the construction and direction of the prosecutor. It pointed to evidence that was not turned over by the police department that was Brady evidence, which meant it pointed to somebody else.
Right.
You know, and so my jury trial lasted for 6 days. I got found guilty on a Friday, and I was sentenced to a total of 60 years. Texas Department of Correction. So they gave me 40 years for murder, and they gave me 20 years for attempted murder.
Wow.
And you know, I tell people that one of the hardest parts of the journey, it wasn't really maintaining my innocence because I know I'm innocent. It ain't hard to maintain the truth.
Absolutely, I can feel
It's hard for others to see the truth,
right,
and for others to accept the truth. But you know what the truth is, right? So it's not hard for you to hold on and maintain truth.
Right.
But
I'm thinking there's so many different things, but like what you said, it's not hard. But guess what? What about situations, just like the situation in Central Park 5 in New York, where those little young brothers tried to hold down the truth, but when they're threatening you, beating you, and these type of things, and this happens still today, then it's not so easy to hold down the truth at the moments that it matter for you to be getting prosecuted and persecuted.
Right. Well, so I think you have two things. You have the internal holding of the truth.
Okay.
But you may express something because of extenuating circumstances.
But that's what gets you in trouble, though.
Because that's where you get coerced confessions from. Where Central Park 5, you got a gentleman, one of my Dallas Exonerate brothers, Eugene Hinton, where he was in this interrogation for hours. And he eventually just told them what they wanted to hear, even though internally he held on to his truth. So holding on to your truth to me means that you don't allow what other people's think or say of you to become a part of you.
Yeah, but sadly, once you break down externally and admit to something you didn't do, then you have significant and severe consequences.
Yeah, because now you have to go through that, because now you have justified the reason why people are looking at you, even though you're holding your truth. You're holding your truth means you don't allow people's perceptions to change you, even if that means you're convicted, i.e. Central Park 5. They held on to their truth, even though they signed these documents, because later on, by them, they could have went to prison and just went rabbit crazy.
That's true.
Meaning they let go of the truth of their innocence.
But the part I'm having trouble to let go of is the punishment that they had to yet suffer. And yeah, the redemption day is great, but I can't erase all of the problems they had to live through that they didn't deserve. I can't get hardly past that part.
You can't, you don't supposed to get past it. I think if we in society try to get over tragedies, then we will never come to conclusions.
Okay.
We have to, I cannot overlook the 15 years and just bask in where I am now.
Redemption, right? I feel you. So that's a great thing. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, because they say that history has a tendency to repeat itself. And so if we don't acknowledge where we're going wrong in our criminal legal system, if we don't acknowledge what's going wrong in our prison systems, then we don't put ourselves in a position to correct these things that are wrong. So it's not that we don't, that we overlook them, but we try to find how these men and women were able to make it through. Prime example, you have the young man that up in New York that was wrongfully incarcerated, and he ended up killing himself while he was in prison. Right?
I've heard of something.
It's a point where going through it, you lose that innocence because now you're going through it. You're going through it.
That's why that sanity part, because obviously his sanity went,
Yeah, he was young, so.
Yeah. And you were too.
I was, I was 19, but.
That's young.
I would say that I really relied, when I got to prison, I was 20 years old, had 60 years to do, which meant I had to do a minimum of 20 years before I came up for parole.
Okay.
Because the murder and attempted murder was in the same incident in Texas. The larger number kind of eats up the smaller number. So I really only had a 40-year sentence in which I had to do 20 years on, and then I would come up for parole.
Okay.
So at the age of 20, I'm looking at 39 because I got to do 20 years in here. It's like you have to deal with reality now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Once you're there.
I was hopeful. I was praying, but I had to deal with reality.
Yeah, you did. Probably a confrontation or two or something like that.
Confrontation, all of that. But in dealing with reality, I had something to revert back to, which was my spiritual upbringing.
Right. You needed it too.
Because growing up, guess what? One of the main things they read, one of the main stories you hear about is Joseph.
Okay.
Joseph was falsely imprisoned. Joseph was sold by his brothers into slavery. The Bible says that Joseph spent approximately 12 and a half years in prison until somebody told the Pharaoh, king of Egypt, of this man in prison that could manifest people's dreams to be true.
Okay.
The king has a dream. He hears about David. He hears about Joseph. Joseph then comes and interprets, and he's put in position. And that was me.
Right.
I was like, okay, God, if you're true, because my spiritual affirmation, me, Richard, is Christian. That's what I affirm to. I believe that everybody has to come to some spiritual affirmation in life. If you don't, then you feel like all the power is within you.
Okay.
And that's not realistic, because we get into situations where we are powerless.
That's for sure.
So if all power is in you, then you should never get into a situation where you are powerless.
Right. So obviously we're not all powerful.
We're not all powerful. But if we can tap into that which is more powerful.
That's great. That gives you something.
That gives you something. That gives you
doubt.
hope. So my spiritual affirmation was that. And so I referred back to the Bible, and I'm like, okay, if you're true, I'm in a Joseph situation.
You sure would. Literally.
I say, I'm leaving it in your hands. The
Right.
doors did not open up immediately,
No. Mm-hmm.
but because of my faith in
Mm-hmm.
that which was true to me. The
Uh-huh.
same thing with my faith in my innocence, that which was true. So internally holding on to my innocence,
Yeah.
externally holding on to a spiritual truth that I felt was true
Mm-hmm.
is what covered me as I went through prison.
And I keep thinking, help you maintain that sanity.
Yeah, now
Cause
sanity,
that is so
yeah,
strong to me.
but now my sanity. So those two things helped me get through, but my support. So that was my covering.
Okay.
But my support mechanisms was my family.
Mm-hmm.
Sanity in prison means that you can physically look beyond the walls.
Okay.
You can see something beyond your sentence.
Mm.
That's
I
the
feel
only
you.
way you're going to maintain sanity in prison. You have to see potential beyond the bars.
Mm.
Most people lose their sanity in prison because they can't see beyond the bars.
Okay.
When you
That's
have
big.
family support,
Mm-hmm. That's big.
you're able to see beyond the bars
Yeah, it make a lot of sense. I see your theory.
and you
Mm-hmm.
can maintain sanity
Yes, and that's a must
in an insane
situation.
situation.
Are
Can
you
the church
preaching?
get amen?
Let me ask you if you're getting into that. You sounded like a preacher, feeling like it too. Are
Man,
you in that realm?
yeah,
Are
I
you in
was,
that?
so I grew up under the church.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, my
Yeah.
dad ordained me as a minister in 2002. We,
Okay.
st- we started a Bible study in prison.
Mm.
And so I started serving men incarcerated while I was incarcerated with them.
Okay. That's what's up.
So much like Paul. Paul served the people while he was incarcerated. And so this really put me in a position,
Yeah, you're
uh,
selling now.
right, to be who I am,
Isn't that something?
even when I'm not.
Wow. Wow. That's a classic situation of a bad situation turned into something good, because
Yeah,
wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so that again, so my family was a support to the covering,
Yes.
my education.
Mm.
Once again, remember I made it through
Yeah.
high school. So a lot of
Yeah.
gentlemen, a lot of men, a lot of women that are introduced into the criminal legal system are not educated enough when they get to prison to
Mm-hmm.
be able to get in school to stay out of a
Other
lot of the
things.
insane situations that's going on down in prison.
Right. Right.
you know and so being able to have that family support, being able to go to prison and be able to go to school so I could disconnect
Mm-hmm.
from a place of incarceration to a place of education.
Yeah. And
You
you
see what I'm
did that.
saying?
And you're a great example for so many people. And you're even innocent, and that man makes it so horrific. But just look at the redemption part, and you end up helping so many people, right?
Yeah,
That were in a situation maybe even worse than yourself ultimately. But in
yeah.
the initial, you probably had one of the worst situations for anybody in prison.
I thought I did, but there
Okay.
goes another leg of support.
Okay.
Because when I first hit Cofield, one of the first people I met was a guy named Benjamin Spencer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Ben Spencer cut her in the barber shop. Ben Spencer had been locked up about 13, 14 years by
Okay.
then.
Yeah.
And, when you get to the barber shop, they like, man, where you from? How much time you got? So I'm dialoguing, and Ben tells me, I tell Ben, man, I'm from Dallas. I said, man, I'm down here for a murder charge I don't have nothing to do with.
Right.
Ben pulls me to the side, and Ben said, man, if you're really innocent, he said, I'm going to give you this address to Centurion Ministries, which is an innocence organization in Princeton, New Jersey.
Okay.
Ben said, I'm innocent too. And
Is
they're
that the
working
same
on
one that Joyce and Brown dealt with?
that's my circle. I'm gonna show you how God began to move,
Okay.
because Ben just got out 2 years ago. I think he did 34 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit.
Wow.
He's waiting right now to be exonerated. What are the odds that the first person that I meet
Yeah.
on the unit that I'm assigned to is an innocent person?
Isn't that something? Oh man, that's something
The
in so many
first
ways.
right? Because I think what happens is in life, whether we call it karma, whether we call it universal law, whether we call it faith, we will come in contact with something that will show us everything is going to be all right.
Right.
It's up to us to identify and see these things
And
as
help it manifest.
to help it manifest.
Yeah.
So I meet this guy, I'm like, okay. And so Ben then tells me, you know, I started doing my time down there, and Ben becomes a very close friend of mine. And Ben says, man, your direct appeal is gonna get denied. I said, man, what you mean by direct appeal? He said, the lower courts will never, very rarely, grant a direct appeal. Because basically what that is the same court that convicted you is saying a year later that they was wrong.
Right, and they don't want to do that.
They're not gonna do that.
Right, they're gonna do it.
Ben was like, be real, realistic. I'm in a
Absolutely.
So he was
That's
like,
number one.
that's number one, right? And keeping your sanity.
Oh,
being
yes.
real about I had to
everything,
be real about the situation, right?
Everything, yes.
And so Ben was like, man, if you're really innocent, you've already wrote them people, they're going to get back with you. He said, I want you to go into the law library. He said, you have to start studying your case.
Right.
I'm like, what you mean? He said, because it's up to you.
Yes.
I'm 20 years. I ain't never.
You don't really know what he's talking about.
The closest I done got to law was Perry Mason.
On TV.
On TV.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so I'm like, what you mean? He said, go in there. There's gonna be somebody in there to help you.
Right.
So here I am, man. I put in my request to go to the law library. I get in this room, Lorenzo. I don't know what I'm looking at. I'm looking at books with Black Law Dictionary, Southwest Third, West John. I don't know where I'm at.
Right.
And I see these dudes, and it's about 30 or 40 men in this law library, and all of them is, man, they got notepads, they got typewriters. I'm like, these boys up in here,
yeah,
they more serious in there than they are in the schoolhouse.
Yeah, they own it.
And so I sit down, man, I get a law book, and this guy named Ricky Wyatt come up to me, and Ricky Wyatt sit down, and Ricky Wyatt start talking to me. He's like, man, what you doing? I said, man, I'm innocent. I'm trying to get my case back in court. Ricky Wyatt helped me put my writ of habeas corpus 1107 together.
Okay.
Get back into the courts. Ricky Wyatt was also innocent. Ricky Wyatt has been exonerated and released. I think Ricky Wyatt did 37 years.
Were these brothers from Dallas too?
From Dallas. We was out on the same unit. Unit.
Oh, they've been really screwing us in Dallas, Texas in so many ways.
Man, look. On one unit, I did time personally with Man Spencer, Ricky Wyatt, Christopher Scott, Andre Courage, Johnny Pinchback, Victor Thomas. We were all on the same.
Did you and Mayhem do a little space together?
Me and Mayhem, but all of these men were innocent.
Okay, right. Yeah, isn't that wow? That's horrible. All these innocent brothers locked up.
But, and I'm not gonna say but, because when you say but, that disregards the first statement. So it is horrible that all of these brothers are locked up. However, what I'll say is, once again, that was a support to me because I saw it was bigger than me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now you're doing things that are bigger than you.
Now,
isn't that great? That's a great thing. You helping people, man.
Yeah, I'm like, God, we can't break down in here because this is bigger than me. It's a whole bunch of us.
Innocent. That's terrible.
Innocent. On one, and this is one unit.
Right.
I was on cocaine.
In one city you talking about too. So you know we getting screwed all over the place.
The people in the innocent field, these are the innocence organizations. They estimate 10% of America's prison population is innocent.
And that's
Now,
including all colors, right?
that's including all colors, because if you go to an innocence conference, so every year the Innocent Network hosts innocence conferences. And when you go to these innocence conferences, you're going to be looking at about 300 to 500 men
That are
and women, all ethnicities. However, black men,
is the majority.
black men majority,
Yes,
are the highest numbers, but you do have women, you do have Hispanics, you do have Asians. So it is, people don't understand how easy it is for a person to be wrongfully convicted, even if you take out the processes of the police officers, if you take out the interrogation, if you take out the lawyer, if you take out the prosecutor, you still have the jurors that walk into a jury room and they're not thinking that these folks got an innocent man. They got to prove to me he guilty.
right. That's the way they're supposed to, though. But
the average juror walking in there,
yeah,
man, they done found him guilty. I wonder what he done.
Right.
Listen to this case. I'm gonna see how much you are disregarding innocent until proven guilty when you walk into a jury room during via door to be selected for a jury, and you walk in there not saying this person is innocent. Because when you say, in my mind, this person is innocent, then that means you put the prosecutor to work. The prosecutor's job is to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you are convicting the right person.
That's correct.
And when they don't do that, by law, you are supposed to say not guilty. So that means jurors are really not holding prosecutors to the T, because you walking in there already convicting the man.
In most cases.
So
especially when we're involved.
So the prosecutor's job is 50% done because the jurors are 50% thinking that this person is already guilty.
And instead of having to prove that the person guilty, for them, you got to prove that they innocent.
So the burden of proof switches. And this is important. And this is what I found out when I filed my writ of habeas corpus 1107. We got to understand that the Court of Criminal Appeals, when you go to jury trial, they hold that verdict to be true because these are competent, law-abiding citizens of your peers. And they have sat and listened to this evidence, and they have judged this evidence, and they have rendered this verdict of guilty. And we won't, we can't overturn the jury's verdict because these are the people that's been selected, and we feel that they are competent.
Yes.
So now you got a the legal term is Herculean task.
Okay.
As in Hercules, a huge task.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a huge task to overturn a jury verdict.
Right.
And so jurors got to understand that, once again, as we was talking about, the 10% of America's prison population is innocent. Jurors got to understand their hand in these cases. When you don't go back and ask the question, if it's something that doubts you in your mind, go back out there and ask the prosecutor, hey, we didn't understand. It's not that you want to let a guilty person go, but you want to be sure that an innocent person ain't convicted.
Yeah, I've been on a jury twice, one time a murder and one time a DWI.
Yeah. And
it's terrible way some people do, where they just willing to go along with the majority because they don't want to put in the time. And I thought that was terrible.
Yeah. So. And so that was the reason why my writ of habeas corpus that Ricky Wyatt helped me with got denied. You know, it was that reason we couldn't, because I went to jury trial and the courts hold the juries to a very high standard. The other reason was we couldn't afford my transcripts. You know, so my transcripts was like $3,000. You know, and you need your transcripts to substantiate
Right.
your claims of actual innocence.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the courts would go back and get my transcripts and look.
You thought.
I thought. I mean, they got access. You're the ones that got access to them for free. If somebody's saying they're innocent, then hey, you got the record. But it doesn't happen like that.
Maryland wants some money, man.
Yeah, so they denied me for not providing extra record evidence to substantiate my claim of actual innocence. And they did this in 2001.
So there's two criminal systems. There's a criminal justice system and there's a criminal injustice system.
Right.
All built in one. And certain people are, you know, sanctioned for the certain types based on melanin is the way it looks. Right.
Well, I was
not in all cases, but you said the majority, and then the male blacks at that, not just blacks, but then the males. And surely we have to know to some degree we are targeted in this nation. It's not new.
Right.
I doubt it ever go away.
Well, I would say that we have. I don't refer to our system as a criminal justice or injustice system. It's a criminal legal system that is oftentimes void of justice.
Okay, I like that.
So you take my case, okay? There is a beautiful legal procedure that is set up. What is that procedure? A crime happens, a report is made, a description is sent out, a person is arrested, they're interrogated, they're indicted, they're given an attorney, they go to jury trial, they have a prosecutor, there's a jury, they're found guilty, they go to prison. All of that is legal because it's what? Due process. However, I'm innocent, so it's void of justice. The same legal process that works for a guilty person was operating with an innocent person. So it's not a criminal justice system.
Okay.
It's a legal procedure that we are incorporating within our society. We can't say that everything legal is just.
And because we know it's not in a lot of cases, no doubt.
It's not just. So that's why when I speak about it, it's a criminal legal system that we should push and move towards justice for.
I feel
what is
a great concept.
Yeah. So what does justice look like being incorporated in our criminal legal system?
Well, if it was real, it would be the last 5 words of the Pledge of Allegiance to this flag being reality, which we know is not. That's what we need.
Right.
Yeah, for that.
And so that's what I'm saying. And so when you look at our system for what it is, it's a criminal legal process.
You're so accurate, and I love it too.
Right.
And, you know, I like to learn, and I just learned some good stuff just then.
Yeah. So now let's incorporate justice into this process, making sure that the right person is arrested, making sure all procedures are handled during investigation and pre-trial. Right. Making sure once that person is incarcerated, there are rehabilitative resources within that system to ensure that when this person is released, they will be a productive citizen in society.
Well, you're talking about basically a society that care about everybody. That's not the society we live in.
Right. Once again, the reality.
Yeah, and that is reality. That's not the world we live in.
Right, because prison is more than a physical place. Prison is constructs that are created. And so oftentimes we find ourselves in particular prisons out here because it's a construct that's created to maintain a particular behavior, mindset, or pattern.
Like something that I'm realizing, like, you know, I've been doing volunteer work more than 30 years with youth and stuff like that. And I notice it's not near as many people, period, involved as it should be. But, you know, I like black men to get involved. But what I just come to realize this year, man, actually last year now, 2022, that possibly a lot of reasons that there's not a lot of black men involved because so many black men that would like to be involved do have some aspect of a criminal record. And when you want to volunteer in schools, you have to pass a background check. When they see this prison thing, you're denied. And I'm just thinking of that. last year that that's probably why it's not as many brothers involved in volunteering as there would be otherwise. You see?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I was just talking with a gentleman yesterday about that same thing. He's a great community leader, does a lot of things within the neighborhood. Was trying to get this program together and petitioned it to a school, and he just received word back that he wouldn't be able to, do this with the school because of his felony background.
Right, right.
I think that, to that point of what we was talking about, the criminal legal process or the criminal legal procedure, injecting justice within that would mean once a person has served their time, then they are re-engaged into society.
At least able to.
They're not even able to. Once you serve your time, you should be
I mean, as an allowed, that able. I'm talking
allowed.
about.
Yeah. Able. I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. But it should be it should be an automatic, like when you wake up, good Lord gives you breath, you breathe. When that person gets out and serve their time, when parole said you are approved, they should be re-engaged. It shouldn't be.
Well, it shouldn't be like it is, because like it is they don't have proper motives. Let's just be real.
Right.
And there's the people targeted to be hindered, and that's us. Let's keep it real. You feel me? So so it's up to us to handle our business, because us handling our business, we can overcome all of this.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think,
absolutely.
but I think also what we have to acknowledge is, as we go back to my time in prison, and the reason why I'm so passionate about the work that I do with Miles of Freedom as it relates to helping people return home from prison and being advocates for those in prison that want self-change and that need self-change is, the full time that I was in prison, there is, you are totally separated from society. And if I got locked up in the early 90s. And if, in this time frame, this was when gang violence was erupting. This was when they built all those prisons just out of the blue. They just started building prisons. And so it was like this blanket action that went on beneath our noses that entrapped a lot of Black men, that entrapped a lot of Hispanic men, that entrapped a lot of minorities in general within the system. And you could see, if you look at the exonerations, you will see that between the 80s and 90s, early 90s, this is when a lot of these wrongful convictions kind of are there around that particular era. And so it's not a coincidence that, particularly in Texas, we started building all these prisons.
Now it's part of a plan.
A part of a plan. So a prison is a business. And so if you build in a business, you got to have commodities within that business, And so the challenge, though, is what we fail to realize is backing into the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment states that slavery and involuntary servitude has been abolished, except
with the exception
for punishment of a crime. And so what does that mean? That means that when a person is punished for a crime, according to the 13th Amendment, we can place them back into slavery. Well, what is slavery? When you break open slavery was everything that the prison system does. Disassociation from family, lack of education, improper medical assistance, and working for free.
Right.
And so we are putting people back in this mindset, in this condition of living. And the question that comes is, what happened to the slaves after the Emancipation Proclamation? Did they walk out and leave and go sign and fill out a job application? They couldn't. What happens when a person comes out of prison? The
same way. Absolutely. Same way. And then they hinder you from other things, voting, volunteering, and stuff like that. You can't do none of that either.
And when I experienced this, people ask, man, why didn't you start an organization that helps innocent people come out?
Mm-hmm.
Because innocent people in prison is only a root
Mm-hmm.
of the seed. It's not the seed.
Mm.
It's only a root that came out of a seed that was implanted.
Mm.
You have to get the seed. You have to really get in it. And so for me, it was helping anybody that's within our prison system
Mm-hmm.
coming home from prison. It
Right.
wasn't just
Just the
helping the
innocent.
innocent people. Because when my dad died, and the man that I am today gives credit to the men that I encountered while I was incarcerated. I found in prison that a person reaches redemption faster than they will reach rehabilitation.
Mm.
A person will come to a moment in prison where they acknowledge what sent them there, and they will go through this internal transformation, and they will begin to be this new person within this institution. That's redemption.
Mm.
But that same person needs skills and support
Right.
for rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where our system falls short. This is where the gaps and pitfalls, and we can sit down and talk about and point at the gaps, or we can be a resource within that gap.
Absolutely.
And that's
That's
what Miles of Freedom is.
that's the answer.
Because of my journey,
Mm-hmm.
because of what I was covered
Right.
to
Right.
experience, he's allowed us to create this organization that's worked with over 1,800 men and women, within the past 11 years. That's distributed over 2 million, almost 2 million pounds of food to the communities through our fresh produce distribution.
Right in
That
the DFW area,
in
right?
the DFW area, no income
Mm-hmm.
restriction, no zip code restriction. He's blessed us to create a social business, a lawn service that's able to provide transitional employment for men and women that's going through case management.
That's
We are
great.
literally in the gap to provide holistic services to the individuals, families, and communities impacted by incarceration.
That's a great thing. I applaud you, brother. Absolutely. Because so many people get out and go about their business,
Yeah.
you know, and almost like the Central Park Five. Because I've seen When They See Us and When They See Us Now. Did you see
Yeah.
those? When They See
Uh-huh.
Us Now is when they're showing those brothers now, the real brothers, Oprah
Uh-huh.
Winfrey and the lady that did the thing. And I noticed four of those brothers left New York.
Yeah.
One brother, the one that was dealt the harshest hand, that brother, he stayed and has a foundation in New York. That
Yeah.
brother
Yeah.
left. So
Yeah.
yeah, I commend you also because you could have just went on about your life and do what you do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great thing. It's a
You know,
sacrifice.
I was blessed. I am the youngest exoneree in Dallas, and so it's
How
like
old are you?
I'm 47. I'm 47.
Okay.
So I went in at
Okay.
19. If you look at the other exonerees, they probably went in at 20 or 30 and did 20 or 30 years, and so they
Mm.
walked out in their late 40s, in
Right,
the
right.
early 50s, couldn't have kids, and
Mm-hmm.
so
Right.
when I look at my brothers, we gotta keep in mind, and even the guilty people that come home from prison, you can either be scarred or you can be wounded. The prison system will do one of the two things. It will
Mm-hmm.
scar you, which means you have reached a point of healing
Okay.
when you're walking out.
Mm-hmm.
You've dealt with the issue of going in. For me, it was dealing with the wrongful incarceration. For others, it might be dealing with what actually sent them to prison. So you've dealt with this wound, and as you're coming out, this wound is healed, which leaves a scar. It's
Mm-hmm.
still sensitive if somebody touch it, but
Right,
it's a
right.
scar there, right? And you have those that are wounded, which means it was no time to heal.
Okay. It's
It's
still
such like
open.
such like the Central Park Five, those men and women that come out of our prison system that are wounded.
Right.
They can't do anything because they're still
Man.
wounded. They haven't reached the point of healing. That scar hasn't covered that tissue, right?
That's deep. I love it.
And so I was one that went through and I came out scarred. When you see me, you'll see the scars. When you talk to me, but you will see also that I'm healed from that which had wounded me.
But you don't have any open wounds.
I don't have any. I'm able to engage. I'm able to dialogue. I'm able to meet goals and make goals, and I'm able to do that. And I don't count that lightly. I don't count that
Absolutely.
as
And you
just,
care about others outside of yourself, which is significant.
Yeah. You have to.
Very significant.
So but yeah, man, that's pretty much,
I appreciate it, man, because you really gave the viewers a lot to know about that. I'm sure they didn't know, because I didn't know a lot of stuff, and it's good to know.
Yeah.
Because this system is serious, and that's why I mentioned to you about here in Texas, they used to have a program. Well, they still have it in Texas, Operation Outreach, which is just like Scared Straight in New York. And it was here locally in Hutchins State Jail that Black Men Who Care used to participate in. And I'll tell you, if we took 20 children, 18 of them straightened up.
Yeah.
But that's the only time they get to see life inside of a prison without being an inmate. And when they see the reality of that, the average person knows they don't want to live in that situation.
Yeah.
So I'm going to see what I can do about, can we get this thing going back? Because Terry Hyde was over and they tried to stop it once. She fought and made it where they didn't stop it.
Yeah.
Situation happened. She's not in politics. But I want to see, can we do that? Because that's, to me, is about trying to do the prevention part and helping in advance, avoid and prevent. Just like this thing with these podcasts, like what I'm doing. I notice there's a lot of brothers in this game that's really successful, that they are former prison inmates. And I'm glad to see that they have found something they can do, because the average brother, I suspect, that has a significant prison situation, he needs pretty much his own business if he's going to thrive, right?
Yeah.
So,
that, you brought up a point, and I do want to just interject this thought as you was talking about the outreach as it relates to youth. And it's I think one of the challenges that we have to embrace is when you take that person in there, whoever the program is for, the biggest hurdle that we, and I say we being people incarcerated, because I was in prison, innocent or guilty.
Right.
Our biggest hurdle isn't the physical, what the kids will see. Our biggest hurdle is the incarceration of the mind, in which we have to release ourselves from. There is a mindset that even I was born into because of where I was at. I remember I had turned 30 in prison. I had been locked up 11 years at that time. And I worked in the infirmary. And, the nurses would always say, "Good morning, Mr. Miles. Good morning, Mr. Miles." And my response would be, "All right, all right." It was how I respond. All right, all right.
Right.
And one day the nurse asked me, she was like, "Mr. Miles, we always come in and say good morning. Why don't you ever say good morning back?" And so much like us today, we listen, but we don't hear. And when she said that, for the first time, I heard her. And I thought, I said, you know what? When I wake up in the morning, I don't look at my cellie to say good morning. I just look at my cellie and I say, "You all right?" My cellie looks down back at me. He says, "I'm all right, I'm all right." And so this became a norm. Irregardless of what anybody was saying to me,
right.
Good morning, the response, I wasn't hearing good morning. I was listening to good morning, and I was giving you a response of all right, all right. She pulled my coattail, Lorenzo.
Right.
And she woke me up to the imprisonment of my mind.
Wow. Is that called being institutionalized?
Institutionalized. It was a world that I grew up in for the past 11 years. This is what I
Right,
do.
right. That culture, you
That
have
culture.
adapted it. Right.
So we have to understand when we do take these youth or when people come out of prison, it's a culture, an unseen culture that is even more dangerous than the physical altercations that you
Mm,
get in, because that's where people die. You can be physically released, but still have that culture that's detrimental to you and society.
wow, that's deep. But I'm telling you, listeners, especially people that are from some of this world, they're going to benefit from
Yeah,
your wisdom and knowledge and information that you're sharing. And it's interesting, so much going on, and especially that all those innocent brothers, you say they were all from Dallas. That is so
yeah.
crazy. But there's a young brother locally that he has a clothing line called Flatline. I just met the brother, bought his stuff because I like to buy, products from black companies, black people. And this fella just got out of prison November last year. Said he did 18 years, and he looked pretty young to me. But then I
Mm.
talked to him, and he's 38. So I mean, he went in at 20, did 18 years, and we're going to communicate some more. I'm probably going to have him on the show, something like that.
It's
But
great.
it's sad that it's obvious that there's some targeting going on in this area. Even the fact that they go by the failure rate in elementary school of third graders to determine
Mhm.
how many prisons to build. So
Yeah,
it's all planned. And
yeah,
like you say, like right across from Frank Crawley, Lou Sterrett, is that forget the name of it. It's a private owned prison, state prison,
hmm,
private
yeah,
owned. So, like you said, if you have a business, you need to have where you making money with your business. So you need bodies,
yeah,
and
yeah,
primarily, you know how it go.
yeah.
So, but we can count it with unity within our black communities. You see,
Right, right,
and
right.
utilize our resources for our own well-being and betterment, and that's the key. And we're headed that way. I say we're at the threshold.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I agree. I agree, man. I agree.
yeah.
So most definitely, man, it'd be great to hear that gentleman's story. I
Oh
appreciate.
yeah.
Yeah,
38 years old. Just did 18 years. You talking about coming out in November? That's not that long.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm curious to see what's happening. But what happened was it's another brother, Monty Jones, on Facebook, where I saw him when I wear this well off with Deion Sanders Jr. Clothing. And so, and I have it on, I say, I like to wear black owned stuff. And this brother, Monty Jones, he did this flatline, but it turned out exactly his brother's business, the brother that just got out of prison. And so
gotcha.
that's a great thing. And that
Yeah,
brother, Monty Jones, he knows Mayhem the Mentor. That's how I know him through this Facebook, because I'll see people that know people I care about, and I'll
yeah.
ask them to be friends, that
Right,
kind
right,
of thing.
right. Well,
And see
right
what
on.
it's building
Yeah,
just by
most definitely.
coincidence of caring and wanting to make a difference.
Yeah,
Opportunities are there for whatever you care about. That's what I
yeah,
believe.
yeah. Right on. That's why I told you in the beginning, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate you
yeah.
and your platform.
Oh, you too, brother.
We,
Thanks for coming and giving your time. I appreciate you.
yes,
Absolutely.
sir, man.
Hey.
Most definitely, we look forward to talking with you soon.
Oh, yeah. You have a great day, brother.
All right. Oh, yeah. If you anybody need help, you visit www.milesoffreedom.org. If you're in the Dallas, Texas area and you need assistance returning home from prison, if you're in the
That's what's
Dallas,
up.
Texas area
Yeah.
and you need food,
Yeah.
if you're in the Dallas, Texas area and you are a family member just looking for some legal, advice, we don't provide legal advice, but we can send you in the right direction. Feel free to reach out. Our phone number is also
Okay.
214-290-2337.
Thank you, brother. So appreciate that.
I'm gonna put that plug in.
I'm glad you did. You almost missed it.
All right.
Have a good day, brother.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right.